welcome to Covenant Calendar Club. We're so glad that you're here, and we pray that you'll be richly blessed from the information that you're about to receive. With that, we'd like to give you a big shout out. Welcome, everyone, shall we?
Shalom, everyone. Shalom, everyone.
Welcome.
Oh, we're so glad you're here. And we're going to go ahead and turn the video over to Tim and Jeanette.
Okay, I'm going to bring up the share here. Rightly divide the word of truth. A sixth cycle crucifixion. And I hope everybody's paying real close attention to my spelling on crucifixion. And I hope you get a really good hint of what's to come by that. This is a pretty interesting study. I've thoroughly enjoyed making it. Charlene has given me a lot of help, and we worked back and forth on it, and I hope you guys enjoy it. You're probably going to see a fair bit of repetition in here tonight. I'm trying to stress one particular question, and it will be coming up. A sixth cycle crucifixion, premier focus. This study will attempt to justify a sixth cycle crucifixion. A sixth cycle crucifixion is always the 24-hour preparation period immediately before every weekly seventh-day Sabbath. And there are several intended purposes for this presentation. Number one, can we, with full scriptural support, claim that Abib 15, as written in the scriptures during the Passover week, is most certainly also the weekly seventh-day Sabbath? This is the question of this study. Number two, is the real definition of a high Sabbath the combining together of an annual Shabbat and a seventh-day Shabbat? Is that what a high Sabbath is? We're going to look into this question, and the scriptures are going to tell us pretty clear what we're going to see. The other intended purposes for this presentation. Number three, do the scriptures allow for a planned burial preparations on any kind of Sabbath, be it festival or weekly? Number four, if the high Sabbath of John 19:31 is not a seventh-day Shabbat, would the ladies have permission from the Torah to purchase and prepare the spices and ointments for future anointing of Yahusha? Number five. Now this is quite important, and we need to recognize this because I'm going to be referencing a second batch of spices. So this number five is important. Nicodemus provided the first batch of embalming spices. How many other batches of spices were there? And who assumed this responsibility? And another important note, this calendar date to cycle aspect that we will be viewing is not known for certain to be according to the scriptures. And I'm going to say that again. It is not known for certain. This is an investigation. This PowerPoint is presenting a suggested style of thinking with the intention of finding scriptural support for a sixth cycle crucifixion. Example of what this means. Was Abib 13 actually on a fifth cycle? That would be a Thursday. Will the scriptures declare Abib 13 as on another cycle of the week? How about a fourth cycle, a Wednesday, or a third cycle, a Tuesday, or another one altogether different? This is the questions that we're going to be examining as we go along, and I'd like you to keep these in your mind and question. The scene prior to the crucifixion, John 13:1. And before the festival of the Passover, Yahusha, knowing that his hour had come, that he should move out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. John 13:2. And supper taking place, the devil having already put it into the heart of Yehuda from Kirioth, son of Shimon, to deliver him up.
Yehuda.
Okay, Abib 13 night was progressing. Judas was about to do his evil deed later that night. Now, for this very specific study's sake, we will call this Abib 13 night season a fifth cycle, or Thursday night. And please pardon me for using the pagan names, but there are some of us that are not familiar with me using the word cycle. And so that is why I include the pagan names, so that we can identify and we can know where we're at in this study. I will continue. It was the night before the preparation of the sixth cycle, or a Friday crucifixion. Can we be absolutely certain about this night of the week timing? In John 13:30. So having received the piece of bread, he then went out straight away, and it was night. And here we're doing a quick calendar calibration. This is a view of the Passion Week with the suggested idea of the Passover occurring on the sixth cycle, or Friday, of the week. And we are looking at the second week in Abib. John 13, 1-3, Abib 13, this would be before the Pesach. And my question, is it the fifth cycle? Judas is sent to quickly complete his evil mission. Is this slide correct? Is Abib 13 on the fifth cycle? How about Pesach? Is it on the sixth cycle? I want you to think about these very, very carefully. The entrance to the Garden of Gethsemane. John's chapters 13-17 pass with the last advice from Yahusha to his disciples on what was about to take place, their responses and his wishes for them. What then occurred after the activities of the Last Supper were finished? John 18:1. Having said these words, Yahusha went out with his taught ones beyond the Kidron torrent, where there was a garden into which he and his taught ones entered. And this would be on Abib 13. And what about Abib 14? A Friday? Is this going to work out with the scriptures? We see in the Garden of Gethsemane, Yahusha and his disciples had entered on the 13th. Mark 15:37. And Yahusha cried out with a loud voice and breathed his last. The secondary focus is Abib 15, a seventh-day Sabbath. We see on the 14th, that's when Yahusha died, that's when he breathed his last, and the next day is the 15th. Is that day also a seventh-day Sabbath, or is it just the Sabbath of unleavened bread? We're going to figure this out. And this is overlaid on a piece of the puzzle, so you can see, I want you to understand that this question is going to answer, or no, the answer that we get for this question is a piece of this puzzle, but we really need to figure it out. At what point did the ladies purchase the second batch of spices, prepare them while observing the Sabbath flawlessly, then arrive at the tomb with dawn's first light, ready to complete the embalming? Abib 15, was it a seventh-day Sabbath? Remember, the claim is that Abib 15 is thought to be the seventh-day Sabbath. And yes, the Sabbath cycle ends at dawn. And again, I'm going to ask you this question. At what point did the ladies purchase the second batch of spices, prepare them while observing the Sabbath flawlessly, and then arrive at the tomb with dawn's first light, ready to complete the embalming? Where did they find time to do all this work? The answer is going to be coming in the study. Crucifixion clarification. Question not if the 15th is the Sabbath or not. For certainly the scripture tells us that the 15th of Abib is indeed an annual Sabbath. The premier question is, did the 15th of Abib contain plural Sabbaths, as in 2 Sabbaths within one 24-hour period? That would be the unleavened bread Sabbath and a seventh-day Sabbath. That's what I mean by plural Sabbaths. Were they together and were they combined, or are they separate? Returning back to Gethsemane, John 18:3. Yehuda then, having received the company of soldiers and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. This is still the same night season that John reports in chapter 13:1. It was before the Passover, according to covenant calendar. And there's your 15th. Was this also a seventh-day Sabbath? There's that question again. You're going to see that many times. Yahusha surrenders himself willingly to the rabble crowd. John 18:12. Then the company of soldiers and the commander and the officers of the Yahudim seized Yahusha and bound him. Verse 13. And they led him away to Hanan first, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. Verse 14. It was Caiaphas who had advised the Jews that would be expedient that one man should die for the people. Verse 15. And Shimon, Kepha, followed Yahusha with another taught one, and that taught one was known to the high priest, and went with Yahusha into the courtyard of the high priest. Where is Yahusha led to next? John 18:24. Then Hanan sent him bound to the high priest Caiaphas. Verse 28. Then they led Yahusha from Caiaphas to the palace, and it was early, and they themselves did not go into the palace, lest that they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. From John 18:28 to 19 verse 12, we learn of the exchange of words between Pilate and Yahusha, and that Yahusha was flogged. What happens next? Verse 12. From then on, Pilate was seeking to release him, but the Yahudim shouted, saying, if you release this one, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself a sovereign does speak against Caesar. Therefore, when Pilate heard these words, he brought Yahusha out and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called Pavement, but in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Reporter John on Covenant Calendar clearly documents in Roman reckoning at this time. And it was the preparation of the Passover week and about the 6th hour. And he said to the Yahudim, see your sovereign. Covenant Calendar's Passover festival has now officially begun when? At dawn, according to Yahuwah's Matzeroth. That is his great timepiece in the Shemayim. It was now Abib 14, the cycle of the Passover feast. The next cycle would be Abib 15, and by this specific cycle, a seventh-day Sabbath? That is that question again. And for those that are not sure about how I get to dawn at the 6th hour of the day, please ask for the study on Roman reckoning, and I will send it to you, and it will explain this very, very clearly. So back to the question, is Abib 15, is that a seventh-day Sabbath? That is what we're asking. Pesach begins at dawn's light. It is Abib 14, the cycle of the Passover feast. The next cycle would be Abib 15, and by this study's suggested requirement, a seventh-day Sabbath. When was Yahusha crucified? Mark 15:25. And it was the third hour, and they impaled him. What is that third hour counted from? That third hour is counted from dawn because Yahuwah's days go from dawn to dawn. And it was the third hour, and they impaled him. What is the timing? From the 6th hour to the 9th hour, there was darkness. And you'll see that in Matthew 27:45-46. What does John say about this timing? John 19:30. So when Yahusha took the sour wine, he said, "It has been accomplished." And bowing his head, he gave up his spirit. It was the preparation of the Passover. John records it here, John 19:14. And it was the preparation of the Passover. Therefore, since it was the preparation of the Passover, that the bodies should not remain on the stake on the Sabbath, for that Sabbath was a high one, the Yehudim asked Pilate to have their legs broken, and that they be taken away. Legs broken? John 19:31. The Yehudim asked Pilate to have their legs broken. Numbers 9:12. They shall leave none of it, the Passover lamb, until the morning, nor break any bone of it. According to all the ordinances of the Passover, they shall keep it. Was this another attempt by the Yahudim to disqualify Yahusha from being the true Mashiach? Question number 1. Why did John tell us in verse 31 it was a high Sabbath, instead of saying it was a seventh-day Sabbath? Need to think on that very carefully. Why did he just say it was a high Sabbath? That answer that you're going to get from that question is a massive piece to this puzzle. Questions 2 and 3. Is John positively indicating that this was not just a high Sabbath, but a seventh-day Sabbath as well? Or have many just assumed that John was telling us that this was a Sabbath, that this Sabbath was also a seventh-day Sabbath? Is that an assumption, or can we prove it from the scriptures? Another look at the time of Yahusha's death. When did Yahusha die? When was Yahusha embalmed? And about the 9th hour, that's the 9th hour from dawn, Yahusha cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." That is, my El, why have you forsaken me? And there is at the 9th hour on Abib 14. And you'll see that there's that same message in Mark 15:34 and Luke 23:44 and 36. And there is a seventh-day Sabbath. Did you notice the question mark I have beside it? I want you to question that. We are told many, many times that this was a seventh-day Sabbath. Let's look at it. When did Joseph request Pilate for possession of the body of Yahusha? And when evening came, there came a rich man from Ramathaim named Joseph, who himself had also become a taught one of Yahusha. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Yahusha. Then Pilate commanded the body to be given. So when did he ask for the body? It was at evening time. That word evening in the Hebrew is erev, and that is after the sun has set. Do we have another witness for this? Mark says, and when evening had come, that means after the sunset, because it was what? The sunset had gone, and it was still the preparation day. That is the day before the Sabbath. Very interesting verse. We're going to break this one down more as we go. Okay, and when evening had come, Yosef Ramathaim, a prominent council member who was himself waiting for the reign of Elohim, came and boldly went into Pilate and asked for the body of Yahusha. You have just seen two witnesses where the body of Yahusha was only requested after the sun had set. And you're going to see why that's very important. Evening, Abib 14, preparation of the Passover, John 19:14. And when evening came, there's the verses that you'll see full support for a after the sunset request for the body, where Yosef requested from Pilate the body of Yahusha. The evening twilight mixture of light and darkness period before full darkness. So you can see that twilight is after the sunset. So the question I have for you, did the sunset change the day? Or are we going to find that in this incredible event that the sunset did nothing in terms of changing the day? When is evening? I have been through these definitions so many times that I'm just going to read the highlighted ones for you, and if you want to go through them carefully, I would ask you to go back and review this PowerPoint, because these definitions are very important, but let's go through them. Erev, grow dusky at sundown or be darkened. Erev, mingle or mix. And the one from 6148, the web, also a mixture, mingled, mixed, and woof. And we're going to get to this woof word here in a little bit. And here's from the etymological dictionary of the Hebrew language, the word erev, to set, to enter, to go in, to go down. It became evening, it grew dark, sunset, evening, mixed, to mix, was mingled, mixture, woof. What is woof? The woof is to weave. It is the threads that cross the warp, or the weft. And what does John Parker have to say about Erev? To mix, mingle, be mingled, mixture, mixed multitude. Parkhurst then gives text where flies apply, and the mixers and mixed ones mix together. The heavens or celestial fluid consists of this mixture, to be darkened, duskily obscured. Now, please pay very close attention to this next phrase. I hope you can see my cursor right here. Ben ha-arbeyim. If you see this word in the Hebrew, it is erev. It is exactly the same as this word right here, exact same letters. Why it is spelled like this, well, we won't go into that. But this is between the evenings. And Parkhurst says, or more literally, between the mixtures, because the proper definition of the word erev is mixture. So this ben ha-arbeyim means very, very strongly between the mixtures. Okay, dropping down to the bottom ones that are highlighted. When the day is overpowered, the darkness prevails and the mixture of daylight ceases. That becomes darkness. That is your evening. I'm going to read this one more. This is a very interesting one. Gesenius Lexicon. According to the opinion of the Karaites and Samaritans, which is favored by the words of Deuteronomy 16:6, the time between sunset and deep twilight. The Pharisees, however, see Joseph Bellum in Jude 6, 9 and 3, and the Rabbinists considered the time when the sun began to descend to be called the first evening, Arab, little evening, when it begins to draw toward evening, and the second evening to be the real sunset. Okay, go down to where you see note. On the second definition, we see once more the theme of mixture. The comment about the Pharisees and Rabbinists' concept of the Erev evening beginning at noon, extremely interesting to say the least. This study will comment by asking a question. Yahuwah named the time of direct sunlight or light. Are the Rabbinists and the Pharisees placing themselves on Yahuwah's throne when they overrule Yahuwah's declaration by naming a specific time of light as evening, when the darkness commits? It does not align with the scriptures. And here's more definitions. I'm not going to go through them because they all reveal the mix and the mingle and the intermixed and the warp. The mixing is the base theme of evening, Erev. And okay, I'm going to read, after reading these definitions from the different sources, the central theme of a mixing of separate substances or identities stands out quite pronounced. It is in these two portions of the 24-hour season, the morning or Boker twilight, and the evening twilight, that the mixing of light and darkness occurs, and the word Erev can apply. However, this word is only used in conjunction with Boker when referencing the morning twilight. Yahuwah has broken down the 24-hour cycle into 4 separate segments, so we are able to conduct our lives accordingly. Let's move on with our study while retaining this evening mixture information. There's your sunset. This is a very, very interesting verse from Mark. I absolutely love this verse. Had the sunset changed the day? The sun had set, and Mark declares, and when evening had come, that's your twilight. Mark is telling us it's after sunset, and the evening twilight was there. And what does he call this evening twilight? Because it was the preparation day. That is when? That is the day before the Sabbath. The Sabbath had not started yet. I hope people see the ramifications of this verse, because this verse has just eliminated any possibility of sunset theory and proves solidly dawn to dawn, as in the creation account. To me, this is an absolutely remarkable verse. It just stands out so clear. Mark's evening testimony. The sun had passed and the twilight was occurring. In reference that to Mark 1:32, and that will back that up. The sunset did not change the date nor day of the week. It was still a preparation cycle, and the Abib 14 night season had commenced. It was still the cycle of the week before the seventh day Sabbath. Our mini summary: sunset theory has failed miserably. Scriptures cannot support sunset theory. Joseph, at this point, after the sun had set, requested the body of Yahusha. It was after sunset, and the body of Yahusha will now be prepared on the preparation cycle, night season. And here's Mark's testimony. Note, the preparation cycle continued until dawn. Just prior to dawn, Yahusha was buried. And you'll read about that in Luke 23:53 to 54. Question, is this in linear alignment with Exodus 12:10, where Yahuwah commands the remains of the lamb is properly processed and placed out of sight before the first Sabbath of unleavened bread? Yes, we have perfect linear alignment with the Torah, and we do that with dawn to dawn, not sunset theory. Once again, sunset theory has failed to find support from the Torah. In this verse alone, is it possible that Mark has in just one verse has vaporized any possibility of a sunset theory Friday crucifixion? I believe so. And when you go over it again, when you go over this study again, I want you to spend some time on this, and you'll see very, very clearly what I mean. By that verse alone, sunset theory simply cannot exist. What occurred on Abib 15 evening according to sunset theory? According to sunset theory, a Sabbath begins at sunset on Abib 14. Previously, have we just blindly accepted that Joseph asked for and embalmed the body of Yahusha through the night season of the seventh-day Sabbath? Really? That's what we have been taught. How come we have not questioned this? Did the sunset actually end Abib 14? How about Abib 15, the seventh-day Sabbath arrives? Is that correct? Was it Yahuwah's plan that Yahusha's preparatorial burial process was done on a seventh-day Sabbath night season? No, the sunset did not change the day. Abib 15, unleavened bread Sabbath, did not begin at sunset, not according to your scriptures. Was Yahusha embalmed on the seventh-day Sabbath? According to sunset theory, the Sabbath starts at sunset. Yahusha was embalmed during the night season. See Luke 23:53 and 54. Was it a preparation Sabbath? Have you heard of that? Yahuwah did not authorize this preparation Sabbath activity by any statute. And I will reference that to Joshua's Passover, which is a very interesting study. Here is a review. Let's look at Luke's support. The evening twilight mixture had arrived. Darkness was beginning to settle in. Joseph and his assistants prepared the body of Yahusha through the night season for the meticulous burial procedure according to Jewish traditions. Luke 23:53, and taking it down, he wrapped it in linen and laid it in a tomb hewn out of the rock where no one was yet laid. And what does he say? Remember, this is the night season. Luke says, and it was the preparation day. And the Sabbath was what? The Sabbath was epiphosko, to grow light. The Sabbath was approaching. Yahusha was embalmed through the night. Luke tells us it was the preparation day. This last phrase, as recorded by Luke, assures us in absolute terms that the time of burial was not on a Shabbat. This means two things. Yahusha was not buried on a Shabbat of any type. Yahusha was not crucified on a 6-cycle Friday by sunset theory. And Luke tells us, again, it was the preparation night when he was buried. And the Sabbath was approaching. It was about to grow light. How about the ladies? What about the ladies that were witnessing this event? And it was the preparation day, and the Sabbath was approaching. And the women who had come with him from Galilee followed after and saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Now, I don't suppose anybody could tell me why I have the words from Galilee highlighted. Well, I'll tell you. We have found that the people in Galilee were observing dawn to dawn. And that is why they were hated by the people of Judea. That's why they were declared a lower class people, because they did not follow the customs, the traditions of man declared by Judea. So these ladies, they come to see how his body was laid, embalmed, I should say. And what does Luke say? And having returned, they prepared spices and perfumes, and they rested on the Sabbath according to the command. Let me repeat that one more time. And they rested on the Sabbath according to the command. This is vital. This sentence is absolutely vital to understand. There is your first batch of spices and perfumes. Nicodemus had supplied the first batch of spices, which was prepared before this Sabbath. Was there a second batch of newly purchased spices in Mark 16:1? Good question. And the other question is, when did they have time to purchase this second batch of spices? Only Luke tells us the ladies rested on the Sabbath. He was quite sure to record that. What weekly cycle was this Sabbath? Was it a 5th cycle, a 6th cycle, or a 7th-day Sabbath? Number 2, for future reference within this study, did the ladies purchase a second batch of spices on the Sabbath prior to arriving at the tomb at dawn in order to be already prepared? And yes, those are very important words. And then you'll see that in Luke 24:1, the D section. Preparation night was wrapping up, and the Sabbath was growing light. There we see on your left side of the screen, he was impaled at the 3rd hour. Death came at the 9th hour. There's your evening twilight. That's where Joseph requested the body. Abib 14 night season burial preparation proceeded. You'll see that in Luke 23:53 to 54. It is the night season. If you see my cursor here, it is the night season and preparation and burial of Yahusha. Right here, all night long. It is the preparation night of burial. The first convocation of unleavened bread gets closer. And Luke records that the Sabbath, was beginning to epiphosko, or grow light. That means dawn. So the unleavened bread Sabbath was about to grow light. And I have that marked down there as Abib 15. John is in full agreement with Luke. John 19:31-41 gives a full narrative of the events and situation. Then John records the state of time clearly. What does John declare? There, then, because of the preparation of the Yahudim, they laid Yahuwah because the tomb, they laid Yahusha because the tomb was near. It was still the preparation night, period, before the Sabbath. The sunset had zero bearing on events in terms of changing the cycle of the week. And here is another witness. John is in full agreement with the other ones. Full agreement, total linear alignment. what was it that concerned the ladies? And having returned, they prepared spices and perfumes, and they rested on the Sabbath according to the command. That's that sentence. One more time. And they rested on the Sabbath according to the command. That would be Yahuwah's covenant calendar timing. And the question, is this a plural or singular Sabbath? That is the question. Was it an unleavened bread and seventh-day Sabbath, or was it just the unleavened bread Sabbath? Something to think about. Only Luke tells us the ladies rested on the Sabbath. What weekly cycle was this Sabbath? The 5th, the 6th, or the 7th? Did the ladies purchase a second batch of spices on the Sabbath prior to arriving at the tomb at dawn in order to be already prepared? Again, this is a review slide because these questions are very, very important. The summary thus far. The Last Supper occurs. Judas is identified by the sop and is sent to complete his evil intention. Yahusha and the 11 disciples go out to the Garden of Gethsemane. Yahusha voluntarily surrenders himself to the rabble crowd. Yahusha is marched to Hanan first, then to Caiaphas, then to Pilate. Pilate interrogates Yahusha and applies a whipping before presenting him at dawn to the evil throng outside Gabbatha. Yahusha is impaled at the 3rd hour. The 6th hour, everything turns black. The 9th hour brings the eternal gift of salvation, Yahusha's death. Evening arrives. Yosef requests and receives the body of Yahusha. The meticulous task of preparing the body for burial continues through the night season of Abib 14. Number 10, the preparation night's events culminate shortly before dawn of the Sabbath, Abib 15, with the detailed placement of the body in the virgin tomb. Summary continued. The devoted ladies inspect the burial until their service at the tomb is no longer needed. They return home before the Sabbath and prepare the spices and perfumes which they already had. That would be the batch of spices that Nicodemus had supplied. Why so much emphasis here? Because Luke records that the ladies then rested on the Shabbat according to the command. There it is. The ladies rested on the Shabbat of Abib 15, and that would be dawn to dawn. With absolute certainty, we can claim this Abib 15 was the first convocation of unleavened bread. The question of this investigation, can we, with the same certainty, also claim it as a seventh-day Sabbath? Would that mean that Yahusha was crucified on a Friday? Did the ladies purchase more spices on the first cycle of the week after the Sabbath had expired? We'll look at this. Mark 16:1. And when the Sabbath was past, that means dawn had already occurred. That means it was already starting the first day of the week. And when the Sabbath was past, Miriam from Magdala and Miriam, the mother of Yaakov, and Shalomah bought spices to go and anoint him. Dawn occurred, ending the Sabbath, and it initiated the first weekly cycle. I hope you see that big question mark there, because I am seriously questioning the highlighted letters. Did that Sabbath, or did that initiate the first weekly cycle? When did they find time? If they rested on the Sabbath up until dawn, when did they buy the spices? Mark says they purchased spices after the Sabbath was passed. Yet Luke claims, and on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb bringing the spices which they had prepared. They were already prepared. So when did they find time to buy the spices and prepare them? After the Sabbath at early dawn. There's a timing problem here. Remember, Leviticus 23:6. And on the 15th day of this month is the festival of unleavened bread to Yahuwah. It is the high Sabbath. And Luke tells us these ladies rested on this Sabbath. Does that mean that they bought spices on this Sabbath? There's your Friday and your seventh day Sabbath. Are these correct? Was Friday Aviv 14 and was the seventh day Sabbath on Aviv 15? Let's look at it. Luke tells us the ladies returned home, prepared spices, and rested on the Sabbath according to the command. That means there was no work or purchasing done from dawn to dawn on the Sabbath. Yet Mark 16:1 says, and when the Sabbath was passed, that is, after dawn, the ladies purchased the spices. And yet Luke 24:1 still claims, and on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, bringing the spices which they had prepared. When did they purchase, transport, and mix the spices? At what time did they have that they could do that and not break the Sabbath? They had to purchase, they had to transport them two ways, from where they purchased it to their place of where they're going to mix it. They had to do the mixing. Where did they get time? Because we know that they rested up until dawn, and yet they arrived at dawn with all this work done. How does that work? How can we justify that? Did they do it instantaneously, or is there another answer from the scriptures? Let's look at it. When did the ladies find time to prepare the newly purchased batch of spices and remain sinless within the commands of Yahuwah? Let's view this quandary of timing on the next slide. Did the ladies purchase the spices and mix them while resting on the Sabbath according to the command? Could they purchase spices after the Sabbath had ended at dawn, mix and transport them two directions, and then arrive at dawn on the first day of the week, already prepared to embalm the body of Yahusha? The timing quandary. Were these spices purchased and mixed around 4 a.m. before dawn on the Sabbath? And was the second batch of spices already mixed, ready to embalm Yahusha by dawn of the first cycle? There's a serious timing problem here. Something does not work out with what the documentation says. Scriptural information prior to the first cycle. The ladies brought their spices for the embalming process that were already prepared. The work of preparing the new spices was completed prior to arriving at the tomb. The newly purchased spices were not prepared while traveling to nor while at the tomb. The newly purchased spices were not purchased nor mixed on any Sabbath. Could we have someone close off their microphone, please? There's a lot of noise happening here. We would like to remove that from this recording. I thank you very much. When were the newly acquired spices and ointments prepared before arriving at the tomb at dawn on the first cycle? If Passover was on a sixth cycle or Friday, where does that time come from? The question. And when the Sabbath was passed, Miriam from Magdala and Miriam, the mother of Yaakov and Shalomah, bought spices to go and anoint him. What type of Sabbath was this? This is one of the most important questions of this study. What kind of Sabbath was this? Again, and when the Sabbath was passed, was this an annual Sabbath, as in the first Sabbath of unleavened bread? Was it a seventh-day Sabbath, or was it the two Sabbaths combined? Was this Sabbath a fifth cycle Sabbath of unleavened bread, or was it a seventh-day Sabbath? For many decades, we have been force-fed an evil tradition of man, directly related to Isaiah 14:13, where Hasatan declared he would be in control of the Moedim. Can someone look up that scripture for me, please? I would like you to read it for me. I'm going to continue on with this slide, and whoever has it, when I finish reading this slide, I would like you to read that verse, please. How did Hasatan manage to control the Moedim of the crucifixion? Hasatan has convinced people the first Sabbath of unleavened bread is actually on the weekly seventh-day Sabbath, when in reality, it is on the fifth cycle, according to the gospel writers. Yahuwah's Moedim timing has been convoluted by Satan again. Is there somebody that has that verse that can read it for me, please?
I'll read it then. For those thou had said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit upon the mountain of the congregation in the sides of the north.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. What is the Mount of Congregation? Is that not the feasts of Yahuwah directly? Yes, it is. And in this verse, Satan has claimed that he would be in control of the Moedim. He would do something, whatever it took, to usurp the worship from these Moedim. That is his claim. We're going to look at this a little bit more here in a few minutes. Dawn changes the 24-hour cycles. According to Luke, the ladies rested on the Sabbath according to the command. They did not purchase spices on any Sabbath. What can we learn from the scriptures that will solve this timing quandary of apparently purchasing the second batch of spices on a Sabbath? What does the scriptures tell us that's going to clear up all this? What if the scriptures actually show us that the ladies had a full 24 hours perfectly free to purchase and mix the spices before going to the tomb? What if the crucifixion of the scriptures actually fully supports a fourth cycle, midst of the week crucifixion? What if what we have been previously taught is not scripturally accurate? And I'm directly referencing a sixth cycle or Friday crucifixion. What if we read Daniel 9:27 and actually chose to accept Yahuwah at his word? And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And in the middle of the week, how many times have I been told, oh, that doesn't apply to the crucifixion. Oh, no, that doesn't mean anything. We don't need to worry about that. Well, I'm not in agreement with that. I believe that this middle of the week is a direct application to which day Yahusha was crucified on. I'm going to read it again. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And in the middle of the week, he shall put an end to the slaughtering and meal offering. And on the wing of abominations he shall lay waste, even until the complete end. And that which is decreed is poured out on the one who lays waste. We just read Isaiah 14:13, where Satan declared that he was going to take control of the Moedim. These words in black, that which is decreed, I have this box below it stating that is the intentional Moed displacement consequences. These consequences that Satan has done, in which he has removed the Moedim of Yahuwah onto his schedule, these consequences are going to be poured out on him in the final days. Moed displacement. Who decreed that the crucifixion was on a 6th cycle, which infuses severe confusion to Yahuwah's word? How can the 6th cycle ever qualify for the midst of the week? And equally so, who decreed that Yahuwah's Moed, the 7th-day Sabbath, which is his premier appointed time, which is specifically set aside to identify us as his people, by convolution and displacement, is now on Satan's Moed in honor of the Son, the Lord's Day. See, we are seeing here a pattern that Ha-Satan has convoluted and displaced the feasts of Yahuwah. And I believe he has done the exact same thing with the first Sabbath of unleavened bread by claiming and coercing us into believing that it's on a 6th cycle. That feast, the first Sabbath of unleavened bread, has been displaced intentionally by Ha-Satan. Moed displacement. Who decreed? Yahuwah's Spring Festival and the 7th-day Sabbath are not the only Moedim that have been intentionally misplaced by the usurper. The master of confusion announced his intention to do exactly this in Isaiah 14:13 and 14. When was the last time you read these verses and thought long and hard about not only the spring festivals, but the remainder as written in Leviticus 23? Have they also been intentionally misplaced? This is the tool of the usurper. Note the darkness. When Yahusha spoke to the Pharisees and he told them, you have removed the key of knowledge. It is the Tekufa that had been removed and the moon had been inserted. And that is what removes the feasts off of Yahuwah's covenant calendar and puts them on Satan's lunar-based calendar. He is the master usurper. But the feasts of Yahuwah have been and will be continued to be restored continually. Praise his name. Rest assured that the consequences of insidious evil by intentionally displacing Yahuwah's Passover crucifixion moed to another cycle of the week other than his divinely allocated moed, the midst of the week, will most certainly be poured out on the evil one in that last day. What if we realized that by Yahusha's fulfilling a prophecy, his acclamation, it has been accomplished, When applied to the timing of the crucifixion, this restores the crucifixion understanding to the midst of the week. What if this restoration of Yahuwah's word removes the confusion and gives clarity to when the ladies purchased and mixed the second batch of spices and ointments? Questions to ponder. Have we seen scriptural justification and clarity for a 6-cycle crucifixion through the actions of the ladies overseeing the burial process of Yahusha? Has the prophecy of Daniel for Yahusha cutting off the sacrifices and oblations in the midst of the week been fulfilled with a 6-cycle crucifixion? And I say the 6th cycle is nowhere near the middle of the week. Does anyone desire a solution? Where is your curiosity level? Are you willing to look at it? Let's have a brief look, as this is covered very well in detail in other studies with more to come. Note, the covenant calendar calculations from the scriptures will be our guideline. Passover, Abib 14, midst of the week, crucifixion, fulfilling Daniel's prophecy. Then, Abib 15, the high Sabbath of unleavened bread will be on the 5th cycle of the week. Let's check this out with covenant calendar timing. And here's a covenant calendar brief statement of the ladies and spices, bringing clarity for the arrival of the ladies with the spices. In the end of the Sabbath, when the 7th-day Sabbath was passed, very early in the morning, the first day of the week, in fact, as it began to dawn, and that word is epiphosko, to grow light is the definition, toward the first day, which is a Sunday of the week, at the rising of the sun, came Mary, the mother of Moses, the brother of James the Less, Salome, mother of James the Elder and John, and other unnamed women from Galilee to see the sepulchre, bringing their spices, which they had prepared, and certain others with them. Note, Mary Magdalene had already viewed the tomb and left by the time these ladies arrived with the spices. Okay, let's look at it. Let's look at it by covenant calendar standards. John 19:14. And it was the preparation of the Passover. And there is your 9th hour, and that would be Yahusha's death at the 9th hour from dawn. John says, therefore, since it was the preparation of the Passover, and it was still Abib 14, preparation. It was the night for burial. Sunset did not change the day. It was still Abib 14. And we're going to continue. And it was the preparation of the Passover. Therefore, since it was the preparation of the Passover, that the bodies should not remain on the stake on the Sabbath, for that 5th cycle Sabbath was a high one. That is the unleavened bread Sabbath, the first Sabbath of unleavened bread week. That is what John declares as the high Sabbath. And one more to finish John 19:31. And it was the preparation of the Passover. Again, your 9th hour, that's the death. Therefore, since it was the preparation of the Passover, that the bodies should not remain on the stake on the Sabbath, for that 5th cycle Sabbath was a high one, the Yahudim asked Pilate to have their legs broken and that they be taken away. There on the Abib 15, on the 5th cycle of the week, is your first unleavened bread Sabbath. That is on the 5th cycle of the week. And when it says the ladies rested on the 5th cycle, on the high Sabbath of unleavened bread that was passed. And you'll see that phrase, that was passed, in Mark 16:1. And we're going to come to that very quickly here. Scripture provides zero allowance to purchase spices, transport, mix and prepare them on a Sabbath of any kind. However, concerning an annual Sabbath, the Scripture clearly states what is acceptable in Exodus 12:16. Here we are from the Geneva edition. And in the first day shall be an holy assembly. Also in the 7th day shall be an holy assembly unto you. No work shall be done in them, save about that which every man must eat. That only may ye do. Is there any provision in that verse to purchase spices? No. We are told very clearly what we are permitted to do on an annual Sabbath. We are allowed to eat we are allowed to prepare what we will use for immediate consumption. It says nothing about preparing spices. The ladies did not buy spices on the unleavened bread Sabbath. So when did they buy spices? When did the ladies of Mark 16:1 purchase spices? What type of 24-hour cycle precedes a 7th-day Sabbath? A preparation cycle, a 6th cycle. 24 hours of preparation time, dawn to dawn. The ladies had 24 unrestricted hours to purchase and mix spices before the dawn of the 7th-day Sabbath. This is the, pardon the word, Friday spice preparations. They had a full 24 hours. This is called a preparation day, and that is exactly what they were doing. They were buying spices and they were preparing it to embalm the body of Yahusha. Now we come to the 7th-day Sabbath. There is your midst of the week. That is your Wednesday Crucifixion. There is your Thursday unleavened bread Sabbath. We know for certain that purchasing spices, transporting and mixing them is acceptable on preparation day prior to the 7th-day Sabbath. That means performing this work on a Sabbath of any kind, when possible to prepare first, would be transgressing the Torah. Remember, number one, the Sabbath occurs from dawn to dawn. That means no efforts pertaining to the spices whatsoever on the Sabbath day right up until the point of dawn. Remember, number two, Yahuwah had this planned from the foundations of the earth. There were no excuses. The 7th-day Sabbath and Yah's people. There's your midst of the week and the Abib 14. There's Abib 15, the high Sabbath of unleavened bread on the 5th cycle of the week. The ladies were able to purchase and prepare spices on the 6th cycle of the week. That is your Friday that they bought spices and prepared them. Yah's people did not touch spices from dawn to dawn. They were rest, and there was no spices done, touched, purchased, mixed, transported, or anything on the 7th-day Sabbath. They rested according to the Torah. They did not break the Torah. Is there any more? Crucified, 4th cycle, midst of the week. There is your Wednesday Crucifixion, for those that do not understand the 4th cycle. And there is the Thursday unleavened bread. Oops, I jumped ahead myself here. Let's go back to this box. In the 4th watch on Abib 14, the burial was completed. And you'll see those verses in Luke 23, 53 and 54, and John 19, 38 to 42. That was the fourth watch, is when the burial was completed and he was put inside the cavity of the earth in the tomb. Yahusha meets Mary Magdalene during the darkness of the fourth watch. That was on the seventh-day Sabbath. It was still the seventh-day Sabbath. And then comes the first cycle, according to the covenant calendar. The other ladies arrived at sunrise with spices on Abib 18. We read about that in Mark 16:2 and Luke 24:1. Now, read this next sentence very, very, very carefully. Yahusha returns from his wave sheaf first fruit ascension observation and visits the ladies on the first cycle. Very, very important day. Extremely. The wave sheaf and first fruits are so overlooked, especially the wave sheaf day. It is so overlooked. It's a travesty that this feast is overlooked and just almost ignored. And if I have my way, my intention is to raise the awareness of this wave sheaf day, because this is when Yahusha presented himself to the Father to be accepted as the sacrifice for each one and every one of us. If he had not been accepted as the perfect sacrifice on the wave sheaf, on that day, we would not have salvation. This day, this wave sheaf day, when he presented himself as the first fruit back from the victory over death, is absolutely incredibly important. Amazing. Just for accepting the very words as written in the scriptures in their proper order, we find astounding scriptural alignment. Why does that continue to amaze us? Here are two basic items that must be rewritten or ignored in order to achieve a sixth cycle crucifixion. We must rewrite the purchasing and preparing of spices by the ladies who helped to bury Yahusha HaMashiach. And we must rewrite Daniel's prophecy of the midst of the week, the exact time Yahusha cut off the sacrifices and oblations with his death, if we want a sixth cycle crucifixion. The midst of the week was first clearly identified by Yahusha himself at the creation week, on the fourth cycle at dusk, by permanently marking it through the commissioning of light to the sun and stars. A coincidence? Not likely. Yahusha identified the fourth cycle for us permanently, so that there is no mistake. We don't need to mistake it for a sixth cycle. And to achieve a sixth cycle crucifixion, one must ignore this fact that John informed us of the high Sabbath on the day after the Passover and said nothing about a seventh-day Sabbath in that same time frame. What do the scriptures say? And what do the scriptures not say? So important. We cannot add things in or take them away. And what of this phrase, preparation of the Passover? The preparation of the Passover. What is this moed of the Passover being used to prepare for? John could have just as easily used the phrase preparation of the fourth cycle. What was John's intention for this phrase? John recorded explicitly for us to understand that the first annual Moed Sabbath of the year is the high Sabbath. See John 19:31. Note carefully that there is no other Sabbath deemed as a high Sabbath in the scriptures. Only one, It is the first annual Shabbat of the year. The Passover and burial preparation was the immediate prioritized event, along with preparations for the unleavened bread Sabbath. And this phrase, High Sabbath, the interlinear scripture analyzer confirms again from this Greek language that there is only one High Sabbath. The words he and to are translated to English as the. Both words used in the sentence determine the once per year High Sabbath. There is no allowance for multiple High Sabbaths in 1 year. In the account of Joshua, the Passover lands on the seventh-day Sabbath. The preparation then for both the seventh-day Sabbath and the High Sabbath, the first Sabbath of unleavened bread, was the sixth cycle of the week. According to the scriptural example just shown, a High Sabbath is always the first annual Sabbath of the year. We have been mistakenly advised that a High Sabbath is when an annual Sabbath falls upon a seventh-day Sabbath. Scriptures simply cannot support the definition that a High Sabbath always falls on the weekly Sabbath. Not anymore. Not according to John. We can choose to not look at evidence and continue in the traditional path we have been taught, or we can examine the evidence and make an informed decision. By not making a decision, your decision has already been made automatically. May Yahuwah bless and guide you in discerning your decision. The end. But what about the next presentation? Will it be Matthew 28:1, end of the Sabbath? Was the Sabbath 12 hours or 24 hours long? Very interesting question. Very, very interesting question. I look forward to this study. Is the night season always exempt from being part of Yahuwah's Kodesh Sabbath? Does it matter? If you need assistance with this information, please send your questions to these links below. And that is the end, everybody, and I want to say thank you very much for giving me your time.